Hey y'all, welcome back to Shootin' the Breeze. Grab your sweet tea and settle in, because today's episode is maybe going to ruffle some feathers, but in a good way. The title of this episode, Why Losing Weight is a Terrible New Year's Resolution, might sound confusing, especially if you know that I've lost over 100 pounds myself. But stick with me, because we're going to dive deep into why weight loss isn't something that should be rushed or tied to an arbitrary calendar date. This episode is a tad bit longer than 30 minutes, so I'm skipping the what y'all had to say segment this week. But don't worry, I'll get to all your thoughts and questions in next week's episode. Joining me today is a very special guest, Dr. Cox. Now, I know what you're thinking. Wow, 4 episodes in, and she's already interviewing stars from the early 2000s hit sitcom Scrubs. If only I were that lucky. No, this Dr. Cox is a real person, and he's not just an expert in the medical field. He's also a close personal friend I've known for nearly 2 decades. Together, we will be discussing the physical and psychological effects of carrying extra weight, the truth behind the rise of GLP-1 medications, and how to sort out fad diets from sustainable habits. I'll also be sharing more of my personal journey, the wins, the struggles, and how I made it work in a way that stuck. If you've ever wrestled with your health or weight loss goals, this episode is for you. Let's jump in. So let's talk about why I don't believe in losing weight as a good New Year's resolution. I'm not saying it's not a good goal. But resolutions tend to be these grand promises we make to ourselves, promises that often fizzle out by February. And when you're trying to lose weight, setting an unrealistic timeline only adds to the pressure and the guilt that you might feel. What worked for me wasn't some magical New Year's declaration. It was starting small, building momentum, and making changes that I could actually sustain. Weight loss isn't about a deadline. It's about redefining your relationship with yourself and your habits over time. My story started in 2018. Really, it started before that when I was packing on weight through college in my early 20s due to a back injury. I was not able to move much, but by 2018, I had found myself at a very low point. I just had a baby in July of 2017, and I had previously lost 3 pregnancies back to back. The emotional toll of those losses, combined with the physical changes of pregnancy, had me at nearly 300 pounds by March of 2018. I couldn't walk up a single flight of stairs without feeling winded, and the thought of starting another weight loss journey felt like climbing a mountain. I tried so many times before, only to end up heavier than where I had started. I was defeated, and to be quite honest, I was scared of even trying again. But then I met my now partner. He was just a friend at the time, but he stepped in with some words of encouragement I really needed to hear. He didn't push me to change overnight or overwhelm me with plans. Instead, he asked me to pick one thing I could commit to and to stick with it. For me, that one thing was cutting out sodas completely. I know a lot of people typically say they're going to cut out drinks with sugar, but for me, cutting out sodas or anything with the artificial sugar in it helped a lot. I replaced them with carbonated water and fruit infused water, and that small change gave me a starting point. Next, he encouraged me to start taking daily walks. So I began pushing my son in the stroller to the mailboxes in my apartment complex. It was only about a half mile there and back, but at the time, it felt a bit like a marathon, I'm embarrassed to say now. I'll never forget the first time I stepped on the scale and saw the number go down. I was encouraged to start walking further and further. That tiny win lit a fire in me to keep going. My walks got longer and the weight started to come off. By the time I'd lost 40 pounds, I finally had the courage to join a gym. When I first got on the elliptical, which is what I could do easiest at the weight I was at, it was very low impact. I have a fused spine. So my L4, L5, S1, all fused. And so I knew I needed to do something very low impact. It wasn't going to be running. And when I was that weight, it wasn't going to be lifting anything very heavy. When I first got on the elliptical, I could not even do 7 full minutes without needing a break. But I knew that 7.5 was half of 15, and I needed to get to 15. So I kept showing up. Slowly but surely, I worked my way up to 30 minutes. And once I could do 30 minutes on the elliptical, I started adding in some weights, mostly on the machines, but some free weights. I had a very, very good friend named Bree that helped me write out workout plans, even things that I could do at home with no weights, but just strength training. That for me was a game changer. It was not just for my body, was it a game changer, but for my confidence. I started to see change in my body composition, not just the scale going down. I had a lot of loose skin, but I could see the outline of muscles that I'd once had. I had danced when I was younger for years. So my legs, I knew I had muscles in my legs, but I could finally see them again. So everything about my journey was gradual. I started where I could, I gave myself grace, and I showed up even on the days when I felt like I was going backwards. And I think that's an instrumental thing in weight loss is if you, I mean, it's Quitters Friday. Today is Quitters Friday, and you can look that up. But if you've already fallen off the wagon and your New Year's resolution was to lose weight, don't give up on yourself. You got to keep showing up for yourself. You've got to give yourself grace. Think of yourself like a friend. If your friend messed up and they messed up once, would you say, oh, we're not friends anymore? No, of course not. You'd forgive, you'd move on. So you have to do that with yourself as well, especially in these journeys. So having an accountability partner was also key. Justin motivated me when I didn't believe myself, and he reminded me to celebrate every small victory. And that included the scale going down, pants fitting different, whatever it was. He was like, hey, you didn't eat the candy. There was candy sitting on your kitchen table and you didn't eat it. Good for you. So even those small scale or non-scale victories, celebrate them. All right. So as I said, I'm joined by my dear friend, Dr. Cox, and he is with us today. Dr. Cox, happy Quitters Friday. Have you quit any resolutions yet?
I haven't quit any resolutions because, quite frankly, this year I didn't make any resolutions.
Well, good for you. I believe in setting goal oriented intentions for your year. It's very hard to accomplish these big things in one year. So, I'll just say after hearing my about my story, and I know you were like part of that story too. You were very encouraging throughout. But after hearing the story, what would you say about the physical and psychological toll of carrying extra weight, especially for those in the obese or morbidly obese category?
Yeah, before we get started on that, I do want to just give a quick disclaimer. Everything that we're going to talk about today is going to be my opinion. Nothing should be taken as medical advice. This is just for informational purposes only. Everybody is unique, and you should talk to your own physician. So that being said, there's a multitude of benefits with weight loss. They're both physical and psychological. I think I'll start with the psychological ones first. Um, you're just going to feel better about yourself. For better or for worse, people who are overweight are on the whole treated a little bit worse in our society. And this is not necessarily even intentional on the part of the people who are doing it. In addition, you're going to look in the mirror, you're going to feel better about yourself just with what you see. Maybe not the first day, maybe not the first week, but if you stick with it for 3 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years, you're going to look back at old pictures of yourself and be shocked at the difference. Medically speaking, there's a plethora of benefits. Just a few of them, you're going to lower your cholesterol level. That's going to lower what we call an ASCVD score, which is a 10-year risk of heart attacks and strokes. So you're going to be significantly less likely to have a heart attack. You're going to be significantly less likely to have a stroke. You're going to lower your risk of cancer. You're going to be able to do a lot more things that you may not have been able to do. You were talking during your story about how a half-mile walk felt like a marathon, and now you're even embarrassed to say that you felt that way with just a half-mile walk.
Yeah, and I mean now I do a 5K probably 3 times a week. I like to go out and I don't run the whole thing because I still don't have the endurance for that, but I like to go out and run slash walk a 5K every week, and I can do not just 30 minutes on the elliptical. I can do 45 minutes on a stair climber. It's a slow build.
Yeah, and that's great. And I'm sure it even just makes your day-to-day life a lot better. You're probably less exhausted throughout your day, to say nothing of you're being able to extend your workouts.
And well, and just on a like a day-to-day level, I have four kids and I've over the last couple of years gotten to coach their soccer teams. That was something I could not have dreamed of when I was at my heaviest. I couldn't have dreamed of it. And now it's easy. It's fun.
Exactly. It opens up new opportunities that they're not technically closed off to people who are overweight or obese, but in a sense, they kind of are.
Right. I mean, it's not like anybody's standing there saying you're not allowed to coach, but you don't want to, you don't feel like it.
Exactly.
All right. So I do want to go to a little bit more of a controversial topic. And I know that it's controversial in the medical field and it's controversial among just, I guess, the general population. But these new miracle drugs, the GLP-1 medications and peptide compounds, there's been a lot of buzz about them and they're kind of made famous by celebrities. My first thought is to go, I think the first person who really did it was Kim Kardashian. And she did it so she could get into Marilyn Monroe's dress. Kim Kardashian's already like a fairly thin person, but she just wanted to get it small enough to fit into this dress. She started injecting with medications somewhat like Ozempic or Wegovy. So, what are your take on these so-called miracle drugs? Are they safe and do they work long term?
So it's going to depend. For the right patient, I agree that these are miracle drugs, but you have to select the patient properly. Most of these medications are approved for diabetics, and their primary purpose in development was to help diabetics lower their A1C, which is their average blood sugar over a period of 3 months. That said, we now have some that have been approved specifically for weight loss, but we still have to select the patient appropriately. Somebody who has a BMI of 23, 24, and they just want to lose a couple of pounds, that's not a good patient to be on any of these GLP-1 medications.
So are you
If
saying
we're
Kim
talking,
Kardashian might not have been the best patient for these medications to get into a smaller dress size?
I'm not her doctor. I'm not going to comment on anybody's specific case.
All right, fair enough.
Um, but that said, if we're talking just in terms of weight loss, the appropriate patient generally is a patient with a BMI over 30 who's tried to lose weight already and hasn't been able to. Um, we can generally drop that BMI down to 27 if you have some sort of a weight related comorbidity. That can be anything from high blood pressure, high cholesterol, sleep apnea, arthritis, fatty liver, even diabetes. Although, if you have diabetes, we're probably going to be using diabetes as your primary indication for this medication anyway.
I see.
I've heard some people think that you can eat anything that you want on these medications. You
No.
really can't.
Mm-mm.
The way that they work is they slow gastric emptying and they delay absorption of your food. That's actually why a lot of the side effects are things like nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, because whatever you're eating, it's just not moving through your GI system as quickly. So even some people who are eating their normal amounts, they'll start getting these side effects. That being said, these medications will reduce your appetite. So theoretically, you should want to eat less anyway, but you're certainly not going to be eating three whole cakes a day and still losing weight.
Right,
In
because
the end, weight
calories
loss comes down to
in.
calories in versus calories out.
Yes, absolutely.
And really, going back to people like Kim Kardashian, if you are taking these medications for weight loss, you're actually more likely to have some of these side effects. And when you stop these medications, the weight's almost certainly going to come back. So it's if you're using it that way without having made the lifestyle changes to keep the weight off, you're just going to have to spend a whole bunch of money because these are very expensive medications just to have all that weight come back as soon as you stop taking it.
Right. What I'm hearing you say is it's more about lifestyle change. If you're taking these medications, they're helpful in just reducing your appetite. But if you don't get active and choose healthier foods, it's all going to be for nothing.
Yeah, and really with my own patients, I prefer for them to make lifestyle modifications. If I can not put them on a medication, I would rather not put them on a medicine. I want them
No,
to be eating healthy. I want
That is doctor of the year right there. I know he's my friend, but like that is what a doctor should be telling you. Change your life, get healthy. Let's avoid the prescriptions. If we can avoid prescriptions, let's avoid it. Bravo, Dr.
Exactly.
Cox.
If you can do everything, you don't have to spend all this money if you can lose weight through exercise and diet. Again, as I just said earlier, it comes down to calories in versus calories out. If you have fewer calories in than calories out, you will lose weight. That's just thermodynamics. We'll talk a little bit more later on that because it's much easier said than done.
Yes, absolutely. Well, and I do have a follow-up question to that. Um, are there instances where maybe it's not that simple? It's not just calories in versus calories out. Are there actual medical reasons why people just don't lose weight? And I'll use myself here as an example. I lost all that weight. I did again. I dropped down to right about where I sit now, which is about 165. But I cannot really even with an active lifestyle and pretty healthy food choices, unless I'm in the gym 5 days a week doing cardio and lifting, and I am eating a very, very strict diet, I don't drop below that. And I kind of sit right here at this weight. And I don't love that. I wish I could shed a few more pounds, but I don't really want to sacrifice going out and having dinner and drinking my wine and all of the things. And I can't. I probably could find time if I went ahead and just started getting up at 5 a.m. like Andrew Huberman tells us to do, and get up and go straight ahead and work out. I haven't committed to that, and maybe that will be something I can tackle one day, but I don't see it in the cards for me in the next year. Well, is there a
Yeah, yeah.
reason
So
maybe people just sit at a weight?
yeah, so to answer your question, I guess multiple questions. First of all, yes, it is that simple as it is just calories in versus calories out. That said, getting those calories in versus calories out is very complicated. Everyone has their own metabolic rate, just that they exist at. Some people, I'm sure everybody knows them. They do nothing. They can't keep weight on even. There are other people who they're in the gym constantly every single day and they eat like a rabbit and maybe they lose a pound a month. That comes down to basal metabolic rate. That said, there can also be things like hypothyroidism. And if you have hypothyroidism that's untreated, that can make it very difficult to lose weight, for example.
And what about for the ladies in the audience listening? That's about 80% of, of the listenership right now. What about hormones? Do hormones play a huge role in that? Is that something you're comfortable commenting on?
So I'm definitely going to say that's not necessarily my area of expertise, but yes,
Okay.
after menopause, many women's metabolic rates do slow down. I'm sure everybody knows somebody who they've been able to eat whatever they want forever. As soon as they hit menopause, they just balloon up. Nothing's really changed. They just gain a bunch of weight. Well, what has changed is their hormonal balance.
I see. For someone just starting out, what is the best way, in your opinion, to set realistic goals without feeling overwhelmed?
Keep it small. I think that's the first thing. Really, you don't want to be losing more than 1 to 2 pounds a week anyway. Once we start getting beyond that, it does become a little bit unhealthy. We want to try and lose fat, but maintain muscle mass. And that is a bit of a challenge. That being said, that can be mitigated by increasing your protein intake while keeping your overall calories down. So, in addition to starting small, keeping small goals, only wanting to lose 1 to 2 pounds a week, I'd also say don't get so hung up on the scale. You should weigh yourself. You should weigh yourself probably at least once a week. That being said, some weeks you may go up in weight, and that's okay. I really only say it's a problem if you're going 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks and you're gaining weight all of those weeks in a row. If you've been losing a pound a week, then one week you're up a pound and a half, whatever. As long as you keep going down next week, not a big deal. Don't get too hung up on it. In terms of both diet and exercise, you need to do things that you like. I can tell you to go run every day, but if you hate running, you're not going to stick with that. It's not going to work. I can tell you till I'm blue in the face, you're not going to lose weight running. And in terms of diet, healthy food may not be as tasty as some of the unhealthy foods, but if you learn some good recipes and cook at home, you can make some really good, really healthy food.
Yes, I agree with that. Like springboarding off of all those tips, the biggest thing that was encouraging to me and helpful to me was only weighing twice a week. I had 2 days I would weigh when I was on my weight loss journey. I would weigh 2 days a week, and that was it. And I had to like kind of have some self discipline at first, like don't get on the scale every single day because there are days where you go up.
I think daily weighing is counterproductive.
I would agree.
Um, because you're gonna fluctuate
Yeah,
day to day. You may have had a little more water that day. You may be wearing a different set of clothes. There's so many reasons day to day that you can have fluctuations of really even a couple of pounds.
right, right. Well, and then the other thing was I stopped eating out as much. I knew before I was eating out quite a lot just for the convenience of it. I was to give some context, I was separated and a single mom by October of 2018. And the convenience of eating out and just grabbing quick food was what I needed to do, I thought. But there are so many services now. If you're one person or if you're just going to eat separate from your family, there are services like I really liked Factor, and I'm not like plugging them, not making any money off of this, but I liked Factor because I ended up using the keto diet to do a lot of my weight loss. And I would not recommend the keto diet for a lifelong kind of thing, but for me, it was really helpful when I was just in that mainly I think it was about 2 years where I was losing weight. And so I used the keto diet, I think, for between a year and 18 months. And that I was able to eat foods I really enjoyed, but see the weight come off. And I do not use keto diet now. I count macros now. And that helps me kind of stay within a normal, healthy balance.
So I'm actually really glad you mentioned the keto diet. I did want to talk a little bit about fad diets in general. Keto, Atkins. I think there's the carnivore diet. There's all kinds of things out there. I am not a fan of these. In the end, I keep coming back to this. In the end, they all come back to calories in versus calories out. The problem that I have with these fad diets is they're really hard to stick to because they're really, really restrictive.
Yes.
And for somebody first starting out, maybe that's not the worst thing, but I don't think that should be a stopping point. If you're
Right.
going to start with a fad diet, that's fine, but you need to be learning about counting macros like you have, because eventually you're going to slip up. You're going to want that piece of cake if you're on, say, a keto diet.
Right.
There's going to come a day where you have to have that piece of cake, and that's fine as long as you know how to count your macros, count your calories, and you're still getting really the hardest thing for most people is getting enough protein.
Yes. That's what I was going to say is it get the keto diet for me was helpful because it helped me understand how important protein was. And I wasn't big on I would eat fats, but at the beginning, I think I probably did it wrong, just like anybody on a fad diet. And I really would like focus on, yeah, I can have sour cream, I can have cream cheese, I can have bacon. Like, and so I was having a lot of fats, but not balancing that with a lot of protein. And I remember when I would get to a plateau, I would notice, well, if I just up my protein and I go with leaner proteins and less fats or more healthy like avocado or avocado oil, whatever, however I could get my fats in a more healthy way, I found that was beneficial to me. That was what was really going to be lasting and work. And I like I said, I love Factor because they portioned it out for you so you were eating enough protein and enough veggies and all of that. And I think I kind of more naturally fell into I'm going to count macros because I knew I needed to stress my protein, have some healthy fats, and I still stay pretty low on carbs. I'm not a big carb eater, but like this morning I had blueberry muffins, right? I had like the mini blueberry muffins. I just had one, balanced it with some fruit and my coffee. I think in the past I probably would have sat and ate like 3 or 4 blueberry muffins and thought, oh, this is the best day ever. Like starting with a blueberry muffin. I just kind of watch my carbs now a little bit more.
Yeah, and I love what you said about the lean meats. Lean proteins are absolutely where it's at. I know people love their bacon, but really chicken and fish, that's going to be your healthiest stuff. Not fried, prepared other ways. In terms of carbs, I do think you need carbs. Your body needs carbohydrates to function. That's ultimately where all of our energy comes from, is the breakdown of carbohydrates. And really, carbs make us happy. You eat carbs, you feel good.
Yeah.
And if you're depriving yourself of that 100%, again, you're not going to stick with it. You're going to feel bad, specifically on the keto diet. When you're in ketosis, you feel bad. Your body is, in a sense, starving. It doesn't have the carbohydrates it needs, and it's trying to break down everything to get what it needs to keep functioning day to day.
Well, I'll say I did not feel okay. So this was just my personal journey, but I felt bad getting into ketosis. Like they call it like the keto flu. And it's the first few days getting into ketosis, you feel like poop. Like it's terrible. But when you kind of get in and you're like grooving, I felt like I had a good bit of energy, but I don't know if that's just because I had so much weight to lose. The other thing I'll say
Yeah.
that was like kind of cool about the keto diet was I really loved I did kind of starve myself of carbs for a little while, but then once I like had fruit again and I was like eating more complex carbohydrates like sweet potatoes, fruit, these types of things. Oh my gosh, they were so much sweeter. I really appreciated the natural flavors instead of this processed
Oh,
flavors.
I think that's another really big thing. Changing your palate. A lot of, especially in America, a lot of our food is almost hyper flavorful. Whether it's salty, sweet, savory, anything. I'll take like Coca Cola for example. When I stopped drinking Coke, I still crave that sugar. I craved all of that, but after a while, I stopped craving it. And eventually I did say, okay, well, I'll have a Coke here or there. And when I had it, it was too
Too
sweet.
sweet. Yeah.
Like I'm at kind of at a point now where I don't even like it. And so what you're saying about the fruit, you know, I think most people would say, oh yeah, fruit, it's pretty good. Maybe you have like a really, really top-notch mango or something. But for the most part, yeah, it's fruit, it's fine. But when you've done something like what you've done, you're going to come back and even just that regular grocery store strawberry is going to be spectacular. You're probably not going to have any desire for candy because that's just going to be too overwhelming almost.
I would say yes. It was insanely over. I did like a piece of cake was it was overwhelming right in the beginning. I mean, I can happily sit down and eat a piece of cheesecake now, no problem. But like right when I got off and started reintroducing sweeter things into my diet, it was like a new world. I had a new appreciation for strawberries. And what would you say about an accountability partner?
I think that's a really good thing. I actually offer that to my patients. I offer to see them more frequently just so that they have somebody to hold them accountable if they don't feel like they have somebody in their life who's going to hold them accountable otherwise.
Yeah.
You may not always meet your goals, and it's totally fine if you're not meeting your goals. You just need to be going in the correct direction. And you need somebody to be holding you accountable and saying, hey, what's going on here? Over the last 3 weeks, you've gained 5 pounds. What's changed? Have you stopped going to the gym? Have you started eating a little bit more? What's happening?
All right. Well, I would say
And
accountability,
actually,
that was the game changer for me. I had many
yeah,
people and through my journey that were accountability partners. Just having somebody to like believe in
yeah,
you, even when you don't believe in yourself, it
no,
just made all the difference.
absolutely. And if you can hold yourself accountable, that's great. But I think even if you're somebody who is very self motivated, holds yourself accountable, it's still good to have somebody external to you that you're accountable to, who's going to tell you what's going on. You
Right.
said you were doing this. Come on, because you're going to have bad days. And
I
actually,
agree.
speaking of bad days in terms of exercise, one of the big things that I think helps a lot of people is whether you're walking, you're going to the gym, you're lifting, whatever you're doing. If you have a really bad day at work, something like that, you just do not feel like it, 5 minutes. Just do 5 minutes of whatever you were going to do that day. If after those 5 minutes you don't feel like doing it anymore, fine. Go home, relax. You did your 5 minutes. More often than not, though, I think you're going to find you end up doing 10, 15, 20, maybe even your entire workout. Because once you get going, you're going to start feeling better. You're going to get into it and you're going to be like, okay, I can do a little more. I can do a little more. I can do a little more.
Yes, like I love that you brought that up because this was something, and I don't know if you told me that when I was doing my work. I don't know.
I'm not sure if I did, but it's one of my favorite things to say.
Well, then maybe it was you, but I would do that like when I was, and I still do it. If I'm like, I just don't feel like it, I'm tired. I like, oh man, I've had a long day at work or I'm just beat. I can't do it. I will go and push myself for the first 5 minutes. It is like scientifically proven the first 5 minutes of cardio is the hardest. You are starting to starve your body of oxygen. Your body is like, no, give up. I don't like this. But do not quit in anticipation of something being hard. That is like something I try to drill into my kids. Do not quit before it's actually even hard. Push through that first 5 minutes. And then when you get over that hump, you're going to start. I don't ever get a runner's high, but I do get endorphins from cardio. If you're not getting endorphins from cardio, you're doing it wrong. But like I would get moving. And once you're like into that first 5 minutes, like you said, more times than not, you're going to keep going. And I usually finish my whole workout, but there are days where like maybe you're sick or, you're not feeling it and you get through that first 5 minutes and you quit, and I've done that before too.
Yeah.
So it's worked both ways for me, but I would say that's like expert advice.
Yeah, and you know what? And that's totally fine as long as not every single day is a 5 minute day. Like quite frankly, even 5 minutes of extra movement for a lot of people is going to be a really good start.
Yes, the average American, I
Um,
think, watches like what is it, like 4 or 5 hours of TV a day, or spends 4 or 5 hours on a screen. If we just started moving our bodies like a little bit more, we'd probably see the obesity epidemic in America plummet.
oh, absolutely, and obviously this is not necessarily viable for everybody, but like if you have the ability to put a treadmill in your living room, and instead of just sitting when you're watching TV, you're walking even at just 2, 3 miles an hour. That's a whole lot of extra calories that you wouldn't have been burning every day. That's going to help you lose weight.
I cannot agree more. Well, Dr. Cox, I just want to say thank you so much for all the years I've known you, for supporting my dreams and ambitions, this podcast being one, for coming on today and sharing all of your wisdom with us. I can't thank you enough, and maybe one day I can have you back on for something else.
Absolutely. I would love to. Thank you for having me.
All
Thank
right, so we will talk to you
sticking
soon.
around
For this
All right.
conversation today. And thanks again to Dr. Cox for sharing his wisdom and advice with us. Losing weight is hard, but being unhealthy is so much harder. The good news is you and only you get to choose your hard. If you're starting, continuing, or restarting your health journey this year, remember that the only truly successful method to lose weight and keep it off is through gradual, sustainable lifestyle choices. Here's the truth. This journey, it's not about perfection. It's totally, totally about progress. Every small step you take towards better health matters, and it adds up over time. One of my favorite things that Justin told me in the beginning of starting my journey, and had to remind me many times throughout it, was if you're not moving forward, you're moving backwards. Kind of like that 5-minute rule we were talking about with Dr. Cox. Just move forwards. Push through those initial hard parts, whether it's swapping sweet tea for water, temporarily, of course, you heathen, or making time for movement when you'd rather stay on the couch. And don't forget to give yourself grace when you slip up. Grace is always, always better than quitting outright. Remember, it may be Quitter's Friday, but I believe in all of you. Even if you don't reach your entire goal in 2025, it's a great year to start your journey. Start small, stay consistent, and keep going even when it feels impossible. You are capable of so much more than you think. I know I was. If you have questions about anything we covered today, or even need some encouragement to stay on track, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. You can send me a message anytime. I'd love to hear from you and help however I can. You can message me on Instagram at shootin_the_breeze_podcast, or email me at shootin_the_breeze247@gmail.com. I love hearing your thoughts and comments, so please don't be shy. Whether you're listening on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, or Prime Music, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment. Your support means the world to me and helps the show grow. I'll see y'all next week when we'll be talking about why I have a few issues with Donald Trump and Elon Musk, despite being a registered and active Republican. Until then, be kind to yourselves and have a blessed start to your new year.